Hey, that's great. Greg Bell moment right there.
Welcome to the Meet at the Creek podcast, and I'm your host, Pastor James Jeffrey. If you have questions or comments, send them to mudcreekpastor@gmail.com. That's mudcreekpastor@gmail.com. Meet at the Creek, sermons, discussions, and real talk. Let's get into it. And now I'm on. Man, I tell you, sometimes when one thing goes wrong for me, I don't know if it's this way for you, but everything goes wrong.
For sure.
I'm going to have to, just for a minute, make sure that we're on right here. Yep, we're good. So we're good and loud. We're good and on. So, guys, welcome into the Meet at the Creek podcast. I'm your host, Pastor James Jeffrey, joined alongside tonight the principal of Scottsboro High School, also doubles as the athletic director, and do it all extraordinaire for the high school, Mr. Brad Dudley. Brad, it's good to have you on.
It's good to be here, man. This is a great setup you got. When I walked in, I told you I'm just blown away at all the stuff you got, and this intro stuff and this intro music. You got to hook me up with some of that. I need some of that intro music.
Well, I can get you some. I wish we could have heard it. I don't know what I've done to my mixer over here, but I've dark. Everybody can hear it out there. You just can't hear it on my phone, through the headphones. So I've done something to the mix, but I'll fix that later. When I realized that I hadn't plugged up my iPad, I sort of started freaking out, and I thought, well, we'll go as long as we can go, and we'll just let it go with that. But you guys that are tuning in, like this thing and share it. And man, I really appreciate Brad taking the time to come out and be with us. Turns out you don't live very far from here now, and been a city boy for as long as I can remember, Brad.
Well, yeah, probably too long to be honest with you, but moved back out to my mom and dad's farm where I was raised, and it's Hollywood, or for the people that know the hollers and the hills and the lingo, it's the Kyles community. We're a suburb of Carnes, as I like to say it.
That's right.
But just a hop, skip, and a jump. About 10 miles as crow flies back the other way.
Absolutely. Who would ever thought Fackler would be a metropolis?
I know, right? But yeah, my wife and I, we sold our house in town back in the middle of the summer, and we've been out here since. And man, it's just it brings back a lot of memories. It's just really good feeling to know you're back at home. Mom and Dad may not have blessed us and left us with a lot material wise, but the memories and the upbringing and the things, it all comes back to me when I'm living in a place where I was raised. It just means a little more. And was just on the phone with my brother, Greg, and talking to him just before I came in, and it's family land, and they ain't making any more family land.
Absolutely.
But we're very blessed, James. I appreciate you having me, man. I'm looking forward to this.
Man, it's been a long time coming. I've been kind of after you about it for a hot minute, but I know how busy you are. I do understand how that goes, but I've been fortunate. I had a lot of great guests, and Last week I had Katie Kirkland on, and
Oh.
I'm gonna tell you, it was that was it was a different experience for me having Katie on, because, and I was telling her when we started, I remember when she was born.
Yeah.
And
So do I.
You know, I mean, it was and just now that she's grown, but I mean, I've got my own child now. She's grown, got grandbabies, and I got grandbabies all over the place. And I think, you know, this just shouldn't be. I shouldn't be this old.
I know that feeling. It really does fly, doesn't it? And,
It does.
It does. But yeah, absolutely. I can relate. I can remember when Katie was born as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems like yesterday.
I still remember the very first time I met you, Brad, and it was in the spring of 1991. You know, Coach Harold Meeks had talked me into trying out for basketball and coming out to tryouts, and I did. And I was there a couple of days. I think it was at the end of the second day, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I just don't fit in. Nobody knows who I am, and a guy walks over and says, "I think I'll just sit over here with James Jeffrey," and slapped me on the leg, and I thought, my God, that hurt, you know. But it was you. You came over, and you know, for the next couple of years, I had to hitch a ride with you every day, just about over to practice. And a lot of people don't know this, but me and you, every day on the way over to the Carter Gymnasium, used to listen to Michael Jackson, Black or White.
Easy now. You ain't got me mixed up with Scott Hodges, do you?
No, we used to listen to that. I don't know what it was, but it was on your playlist, and it seemed like every single day.
It was on a cassette.
Yes,
it was.
yes, it was. I mean, it was the next thing to 8-track.
Yeah.
Man, we was cool dudes. Didn't even know it back then.
Well, I can remember that day. You know, when I went to Scottsboro High, after growing up in Hollywood, I didn't know a soul either.
Right.
You know, or knew very few. Jason Tubbs and John Greer was about it. You know, when you grew up in Hollywood, you made a choice after the 8th grade. You either go up the road to Stevenson, or you went down to the river, down the creek bank to Scottsboro. And
Right.
for us, it was always Scottsboro. You know, it's kind of how we were raised, and it was just kind of bred in us that way. And but many great friends from Hollywood, Alabama, who chose to come to Stevenson and go to school at North Jackson, and we remain friends today. It's just a great mutual relationship. But I know that feeling, and when you're somewhere new, and you know, you don't really know a lot of people. You know, what I was taught to believe as a young child it's probably more true today than it ever was, Tater, is that you treat people the way you want to be treated at the end of the day. And that's what that was.
Yeah, you can't ever go wrong with that. I was actually, you know, given that spill out today, and I said, you know, it's unfortunate that it took me, you know, 40 years to figure that out. If I could have figured that out as a really young man, I probably could have done a lot of things different or better at least. But you know, it is what it is. You learn, you grow, and you know, you make mistakes and you learn from those, and you go through and you figure it out and work it out. But you know, down through life, I've had a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things, and I always said I never did find myself as being real good at anything, but I always enjoyed a lot of things.
Yeah,
and I think that it kind of set me up, you know, for who I ended up. You know, what the Lord had for me later on is I needed lots of relationships to be able to do what I do. And, you know, being here, I mean, folks come in and they have numerous needs, and they're all varied. You know what I'm talking about. You know, one person needs this, another person needs this. And
that's right.
When you're trying to get them help, you have to have, you know, all those other relationships.
Yeah.
And to be able to give folks the help they need. And I'm very thankful for the path that the Lord put me on. And I never did get to stay with anything.
Right.
But one desire I always had was to do stuff like this. I always loved to talk. If I would have been good at math, I'd have had a communications degree. But I sucked at math. I mean, I just absolutely bombed at it every single time I tried. You know, bless his heart, Coach Mike Benson, he worked himself into a frenzy my 10th grade year trying to get me through business math. I hated math so bad. He said, "Boy, if you don't, I swear, Jeffrey, if you don't learn how to balance a checkbook, I am going to choke you to death right here in this classroom. And
pretty important skill right there.
Yeah. Choking somebody out is a life lesson. It's
It scare you into learning.
When you had teachers like we had, they were football coaches and wrestling coaches and basketball coaches. They had the art of threatening.
Yep.
Down to a science. I mean,
That's right.
They could scare you into obedience.
That's absolutely. Whatever worked. And looking back on it, you think, man, that's a mean old Joe right there. But no, it was all done out of love, and we're pretty thankful for it these days, aren't we?
Absolutely, man. I don't know where I'd be today had it not been for people in my life helping me along.
Yeah.
I look back on that and I think God put me in my life strong men that I needed in places and times and in moments when I didn't even realize I needed them. He stuck them there to help me and to get me from this place to that place.
Yeah.
What a blessing it was. But, what I missed along the way was all the friendships that I gained. And, I'm coming up on my 30-year class reunion here in a couple of weeks. And, I do chaplain work for North Jackson. I gave up the one thing that I'd always wanted to do to go be a chaplain. And I always told the Lord, I'll never turn down ministry opportunity if you give it to me.
Yeah.
And I fought that for 2 years after Joe started coming to church here. And then, I couldn't tell the Lord no and sacrifice something that I really, really love to do. But every once in a while I get to help, and I still get to do basketball, which is my passion anyway.
Yeah.
And I just love giving other people credit. And I give that, I attribute that to Greg Bell.
Yeah.
And, Greg put a passion in my heart to just, go out and give other people credit for a few minutes. It makes you feel better.
I think Greg Bell is a great example of just a man garnering respect from everybody that he deals with because of how he deals with them. And I can say that he's been a friend of mine for a long, 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 long time. And but Tater, I guess the thing I think about most these days, you're right about the people that God puts in your life and the impact that they made. They may not realize it at the time, but I often think of it this way: how much value I took from those men and ladies, but from those people, and yet I was one of the ones that had a godly mama and a daddy at home.
Right.
I was blessed to have a godly mom and dad, and I still needed the impact and the relationship from those people in my life. And today I look at it and I think, I really can't relate with anything some of these kids are ever experiencing because I wasn't brought up that way.
Right.
How much do they need godly men and women in their life because they don't have the blessings at home that I did?
Absolutely.
And so it resonates with me the older I get, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, when we were young, I tell people a lot of times, I used to have to go out and do some different things. And I remember Memory Day. We always had this tradition in the old building. I don't know how you guys do it now.
Oh, it's like everything else at Scottsboro High. It's grown, and Memory Day is a production now. So
used to we left the auditorium and we had this, and the juniors would go out and make a line, and the seniors would walk. And I the year that you guys graduated, because you and Jason and John, you guys were very special to me because you guys helped me and did things, to kind of make me feel welcome. And no offense to the class that was directly ahead of me, Shannon and Kelsey and Paper and, and Jeff, those guys were great to me too.
Right.
But I was always closer to y'all. I remember I snuck out on Memory Day, y'all senior year, so I could watch you guys walk. Y'all didn't know I was there, but I got in trouble for it. But anyway, it was where I needed to do that. It just for me because,
sure,
I knew the next year it wasn't going to be the same.
Yeah.
For me. And, I'm really, as the years went along, I found myself missing those days. I needed that sophomore year of high school
Yeah.
more than that sophomore year of high school needed me.
Yeah.
And
We had a special bond, man. You know, we were part of changing the culture back in that day of Scottsboro basketball. You know, when I was a freshman enrolled at Scottsboro High in the fall of 1988, I never got to dress because we had this terrible rule of I didn't live in the school zone, and so, you know, I can remember Tater off of our Hollywood team, who coached by Harold West, another one of those great men in my life at an early age that the God put there for a
Yes,
reason.
sir.
And Harold West coached us to 2 county titles at Hollywood. You know, it's a big deal. I learned at an early age what competing and winning was like. And you say, well, it was Hollywood Junior High. It's a big deal.
yeah,
You know, we played a lot of games in front of the student body during the daytime in Hollywood. And, you know, we beat the '86 Celtics in Hollywood's gym in the middle of the day in front of the student body. You know,
that's right.
so we learned that. But at the end of those 2 years, you know, and I can call off the members of that team, and you know, Chris and Lamar Stewart, Stewart brothers from Fackler, who I just loved them to death, still do, and they were the ones that made us go. And they went to North Jackson, and my cousin Bobby Garner, who's special to me, you know, he went to North Jackson, and Jason Tubbs and John Greer and we went to Scottsboro, you know, and the list went on and on. And so those teams, those great Hollywood teams, just kind of got busted up, and we had to form a new culture. So the year I enrolled, I was ineligible. I remember our varsity team that year won 2 games. They beat Fort Payne twice. That's how bad Fort Payne was that year. And I can remember thinking, man, you know, I haven't lost a lot, and you know, in my short time playing, but we're not very good. And Harry Meeks, I credit with a lot of changing that culture. He cleaned it up, and he made us do right. The wins would come later under a different coach, but I credit Coach Meeks for kind of changing the guard a little bit. And then, you know, when Jerry Kirkland moved in and took that role, I mean, it's true player's coach in my mind. You know, he gets you ready to run through that wall for him, and I don't think he ever really meant to do it. He just had that ability on us, and we had a tight bond. We formed a tight bond, and you know, we went to becoming area champions my senior year. To, you know, you guys being ranked #1 state, you know, most of the year following the year, and so there's a lot of wins that took place since then, and so, you know, it was a big deal. It was a big deal of changing the guard and changing the culture.
And Coach, you know, Coach Kirkland still has that, by the way. You know, 12 years ago, you know, when my granddaughter died, you know, I came to the game. I was helping Greg, and I just showed up. You know, just either sit at home and fall apart, or come to the game and try to have a distraction and my mind on something else. And he was the girls' coach then, and you were the boys' coach.
Yeah.
And he comes up after his game. You guys are out warming up. He comes up, and I guess Miss Robin had told him. And before he didn't even sit down. I always got up, you know, walked around behind, made room for y'all. He came up, he looked me right square in the face, put his old hand up on my shoulder, and he said, I don't pretend to know what you're going through, but your family needs you to be strong, and you right now is your time to lead. They need you to be who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, I from that minute on, I couldn't help it. It just, he always had. You're right. He always had that ability to make you. I mean,
he really did. He was, you know, we didn't change a lot, truth be known. From my junior year to my senior year, we didn't change a lot in X's and O's. We just did them better. We did them harder. We did them faster. We did them quicker. We did them with more pride.
Miller Times made that happen. 16
over and backs in a minute. And,
so I ran to life with just literally, you know, I'd see pink stars, and I was always the biggest, heaviest kid on the team. And, you know, you guys had to run extra because of me, you know, And I don't ever remember anybody giving me crap about. I think everybody knew I was doing the best I could. Even Coach knew it. So when I would faint, he'd run over and yell, call me names and stuff. And then after practice was over, he'd walk. When there wasn't nobody else around, he'd put his arm around me and he'd say, "Now listen, I had to do that because you gave me everything you had, and I was trying to get that out of everybody else."
Absolutely. You know, what he probably didn't tell you was 2 years earlier, I can remember this day, Jason Tubbs was that guy, and he was struggling to make it. And I can remember just all out Pete Rose style diving across the line head first to try to make it one day. And I'm pretty sure he missed it on time, but you know, when people do things like that, you earn a lot of respect in the locker room, and you earn a lot of respect on the floor. And that was you, Tater, and it was Tubbs, and it was me, and it was LeBron Kraft, and it was Kelsey Scott, and the list goes on and on and on. Jeff Olenese, and you know, you had to go through things like that together to kind of really understand what it meant to each other.
Yeah.
You know, it's why I've always said, you know, the co-curricular piece of high school, being the sports or even the band part of it, it's not the most important thing we do, but it's right up there with anything else.
Yep.
You know,
You're
because
exactly right.
these are life lessons that we're taking. I mean, here we are 30 years later, as you said, and we're talking about that. So to tell us that it didn't make an impact on our life, you're crazy.
That's right.
I mean, it did.
Absolutely,
And
it did.
these are the things that we take and we apply to our lives daily, and we pass down to our kids and our grandkids. And you know, I definitely would not be where I am or where I've been if I hadn't gone through some of those hard times like that too. So very thankful.
Absolutely, me too, man. You know, I was just thinking the other day about, you know, I remember the year after you guys graduated, that group ascended to the #1 ranking in the state, and I had a good chuckle about it because one day at practice, Coach Vincent was the assistant, and
Lee Vincent,
the man of 1,000 plays. He's on my Facebook. I don't think he ever watches these, but he had to be out for some reason that day, and so Coach Kirkland decided that we would scrimmage those guys, and I was still on JV. That's how bad I was, junior playing, having to play on JV still. But it was okay. At that time though, I had actually broken my ankle, so I was in a big old boot. I couldn't. I'd still show up to practice every day. I'd tote water, run the clock, whatever coach needed me to do. But that day he said, "You coach." So I got to go over. I coached the JV against the varsity. We played. He knocked the clock down to 8 minutes, so we played 2 8-minute quarters. At the end of the first half, my JV squad was up 2 points.
Yeah.
Coach Kirkland came undone, and they had just got those brand new practice jerseys, the running Wildcats. You know, they were reversible, black and gold. You know, it was great. They were nice and they were beautiful. He made them take those things off and put the JV practice jerseys on, and the JV squad got to put the varsity jerseys on.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Well, so right after the change, Coach Vincent comes in, so I get booted from the bench to the clock. About 3 minutes into the third quarter, JV's down by 22.
Appreciate that, Lee Vincent.
Call the timeout, and they swap jerseys back.
Well, it's that little motivation factor, you know.
Things like that, so much fun. You know, that stuff that the public don't get to see.
Nah, you're exactly right. And you know, all these guys, years later, we still share the same stories, but ain't no better storyteller than Lee Vincent. Lee Vincent tells all these stories, right? And I still talk with him from time to time. He's still coaching, by the way.
Is he?
Yeah.
That's awesome,
down
man.
in Gulf Shores, coaching junior high ball. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, but these stories grow in legend every time we talk about them. But again, the life lessons and you know, there's always a takeaway from the story.
Yes.
It ain't necessarily the details. It's more of, at the end of the day, what was your takeaway? Well, you're giving me less than 100%, and that's unacceptable.
Right.
And so, but yeah, very thankful for him for sure.
You know, when I got into the military, I remember, you know, the first day that we were out running, and I thought to myself, these drill sergeants are saying, there's no way that we're going to accept less than a 6-minute mile in first platoon. And I said, there's no way that you're looking at me thinking I'm going to pull off a 6-minute mile. Well, and I didn't the first day. But we get in about 3 weeks in, and I break that 6-minute mark. And not only that, I do back to back 6-minute miles. I thought I'll never be able to eclipse this, you know, in my life again. And then for whatever reason, it was really, really hot. It was Fort Benning, Georgia, in the middle of August, you know, and it's just sweltering down there. And it is so hot. We're out there running. I mean, sweat just pouring. And my mind went back. Just, you know, it's funny how your body will do that, and your mind will take. But my mind went back to climbing those stairs, Carter Gymnasium, looking up there in the middle of August, and those heaters being on. And we were running, and it's already 102.
Yeah. I guarantee you, as hot as it was in Fort Benning, Georgia, it wasn't any hotter than the upstairs of Carter Gym.
Absolutely not.
And for a while there, before we really had good crowds to come and watch us, you know, nobody sat in the top of the bleachers, so they're dust covering them, you know. And I can remember, not only was it hot,
Slick.
it's slick.
Yeah.
But man, you know, the last Carter Gym is such a nostalgic and a special place to me. And the last time I ever got to sit up in Carter Gym, I can remember Coach Kirkland now years ago. If he were here, he'd tell us about it. We played Hewitt-Trussville, and after we'd won the area title on Albertville's floor, we came back and hosted Hewitt-Trussville in the sub-state game. And he tells me years later, I never knew this as a player, but I just remember it being a good crowd. He said, the fire marshal shut the doors on us that night. And I said, what do you mean? He said, they were lined up down the walkway to get in, and the fire marshal made us shut the doors. And so no more empty bleachers in Carter Gym. You know, that was a goal of ours, because we all had heard the legendary tales of people climbing and just to look in the windows in Carter Gym to watch, you know, the running Wildcats play under QK Carter. And so that was kind of you know, on a small version, you've arrived moment for Scottsboro basketball.
Yeah.
It was very special to us. And then, you know, great success followed years later, and we moved into Hambrick Hall a few years later. And to be quite honest, as much as I love Hambrick Hall, I don't know that we've ever had the advantage that we had when we took the floor in Carter Gym.
Oh yeah, man, it was a really, really special place. I still remember the first time we got to have warm-up music.
Oh yeah.
Too legit to quit.
MC Hammer, too legit to quit. I think we had a boom box or down in that corner down there. And
somebody had brought a home stereo set up with some big home stereo speakers and set them up in that corner. And
I'm gonna credit. I don't really know the backstory, but I'm gonna credit LeBron Kraft for that. I think.
believe it was him and Talbert Cox.
Yeah, Talbert and maybe Kareem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do remember that. I do. Every now and then it'll come on, and I remind my girls of it, and so now it's kind of a running joke. Dad, here's your warm-up song.
Yeah.
Too legit to quit. Yeah.
That and Ice Baby.
Yeah. We're showing our age a little bit now.
Oh man, you know what? Just for kicks and giggles, I still play Ice Baby anytime I can while I'm doing PA. But I'm an old music guy.
Yeah.
Last year during the Christmas tournament, somebody, I don't remember what team he was there to support. I remember he was wearing blue, so I do remember that. But he comes over, and he is a parent from a different school. He walks over to the scores table, and me and Melton, and gosh, what's the guy's name that keeps books for the boys team? I always
John Moore.
John Moore.
Yeah.
He's it's us three. And Melton and John both been giving me down the road that day for my musical choices, and the guy walks over and he says, "I want to know who's in charge of this playlist." And Melton said, "That right down there," and that guy said, "That's the best playlist I have ever heard at a game."
Yeah.
Melton said, "Man," he said, "his head don't need to be any bigger." I said, "No, it don't, but keep talking, brother. Yeah. Keep talking."
You know, John Moore. In such a small world, John Moore was the trainer on Mark Goffred's staff at Alabama when I was taking teams down in Alabama during team count.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where we first met John Moore. And
Wow.
As the good Lord would have things play out, and kind of as you say, he married a girl from Pisgah, relocated to Scottsboro, and John, I look up one night. I have no idea that this has transpired. I look up one night and I'm like, why is Coach Goffard's trainer back in the day hanging out in Scottsboro all the time? And somebody told me, so these kids go here. And so, long story short, that's how it all happened. But John's been great to work with.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And you know, you got a deep love for all things Alabama, as I do too. And so, but yeah, that's a small world, isn't it?
Yes, it is. He's great. Brad, before I don't want to, you know, we could talk stories all night long.
Yeah.
But I know we're getting some comments too. Brenda Marie Fawcett, she said, Coach Dudley.
Brenda Fawcett.
She said, the one who inspired me to keep going when I was in a rut my sophomore and junior year.
Yeah.
And just lots of folks.
She's a good girl. Brenda Fawcett was a lot of people don't know. Maybe they should know. She was a fantastic athlete, fantastic runner, and but an even better person. And I'm very proud of Brenda. And yeah, see her from time to time. That's what keeps you going now as a lifelong educator. It's not always fun, but you don't need a whole lot. You ain't never gonna get rich, you know, doing this. But the ones who make a career out of this, they'll tell you, you know, it's the ones that tell you thank you years later. That's what means a lot to you.
Absolutely.
So,
Miss Sharon Hass said that Robbie and I sure loved your parents, Mr. Dudley. They were wonderful Christian folks.
Yep.
And man, golly, we had several people commenting and different things.
Well, that's reward.
Yeah.
Man, you know, because you know, I'm sure like most people, like everybody else, Tater, I went through a time where I probably centered on myself more than I did anybody else. You know, I'm not proud of that, but yeah, those folks are right. I was blessed with a mom and daddy who put people before themselves.
Absolutely.
And you know,
I remember them coming to the games.
You can't put a price on right there.
Yeah, they came to the games, and you could just always tell. You know, everybody's parents are different, and you know, some were like Sid Bowman, and
yeah.
I loved Sid, but he was so much different than your parents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just the difference between those two guys, but they were equally passionate about, you know, the basketball program.
Between Sid Bowman and Bill Strain and Mac Dudley, Baxter Dudley, there was never an official safe. Jackie Scott,
Exactly.
Jackie Scott, bless her heart. Yeah.
Jackie.
If you had stripes on, you were fair game now.
Yeah, Miss Scott would strike fear into the hearts of many. I believe she could make a dinosaur run for the hills. You know, she was something else, man. I really miss her. And I tell you this, when I do remember as I started, I'd kind of quit football. I'd gotten hurt, and I couldn't play football anymore. The football players didn't understand, and some of the coaches didn't understand. A few years after that, Cameron's Holland's little brother got hurt, had the same injury I had. And after that, you know, they'd learned how to deal with it a little bit better, but they had absolutely no idea what to do with it when it happened to me at that time. You know, but Coach Meeks came. They'd stuck me out of athletic PE into regular PE, and he just had us playing basketball every day. And I was in there with Reggie Poe, Cleve Johnson, you know. So if you're going to play basketball with those guys, they didn't play. I don't know why they never played on the team. Maybe their grades weren't good enough. I don't know what it was, but those guys.
It wasn't a lack of talent, I can assure you that.
Man, they would absolutely beat you to death. But Coach Meeks saw me. I wasn't afraid of him. Greg Pace was in that with us. Greg was a decent basketball player, but he never would come out and play, you know, for the team. But man, they would just get in there and just hammer each other to death. Man, I just get in there and mix it up with them. I didn't care. I actually enjoyed playing. It was always my favorite sport.
Yeah.
My mom would tell you I used to spend hours. I had just a little dirt pad with a 6x6 post in the ground and a wooden backboard in the backyard. I'd spend hours out there by myself every day. But you know, I used to love to just do that. I always enjoyed being around it. And when he came over and asked me to come out and play, I said, Coach, you know, I'm a lineman. I'm not. He said, listen, it seemed like you enjoy playing basketball.
Yeah.
And he said, and you ain't scared of nothing. You know, you might not ever get to play. I can't promise you that you'll get to play. He said, but we got a place for you on the team.
Yeah.
He said, I'll tell you what to do. Come over. This was on a Monday. He said, tomorrow night I open the gym. Tuesdays and Thursdays I open the gym. I think it was 6 to 8, something like that. He said, just come over and hang out with the guys. Meet the guys, see if you like them.
Mm.
So I did. I came. I didn't play at all. First 2 or 3 times I came, I just came, sat, and watched everybody else play. And then tryouts, spring tryouts came around, and that's, that one thing led to another.
Yeah.
That just became, part of who I was. And then my senior year, I stopped playing, and it was not necessarily because I didn't want to play anymore. I wasn't going to get to play. Mm-hmm. And I knew me staying was going to stop somebody who could help the team from being on that bench. So I chose to just step away and let somebody else do it. And that's when I went to work for Greg Bell.
Yeah.
And, as it was the right decision at the right time. And in years down the road, it paid off. Everything happened just like I was not sad about it. Yeah. I missed playing. Yeah. But the reality was, it just, when you know something and you're not, and you just have peace about it, follow that. It's good.
Oh, absolutely. Is there a better life lesson we can learn as adults? I mean, you either are in God's will or you're not.
Exactly.
There's no gray area. And, the older I get, the less I worry about things. And that's because, I just, why should I be stressed or worried about this if I'm doing the right thing in the right place at the right time?
Absolutely, man.
And for the right reasons, then
Coach,
it's going to be took care of.
Coach knew why I stepped away. He and I had a long conversation about it, but I told him, I said, Coach, if you don't want me to quit, I won't quit. But I mean, but I need you to say it's okay. If you don't say okay, I'm not going anywhere. But I need you to say it's okay, because I really need, my grandfather had just passed away. My great-grandfather, which was the father and son, the only 2 grandpas I had left. And they had died just within a few months of one another. And I was living with my grandma, and my mom, was struggling, and I needed to be with them. So my grandma went down and talked to Happy. He's still on the station. He talked to Greg. Greg called me, gave me a job running the board. Yeah. So I went from playing in the games to running the control board for the games. Yeah. And so I still got to hear the games, still got to keep up with the team. And I was still, very excited for everybody. Down the road, a few years, I came back and started helping Greg do football. And one day, just out of the blue, he sends me a text message, and he said, if you'd like to do basketball, I'm always by myself. Yeah. I said, man, I've been waiting on. So I came and helped him do basketball. And then once you came back, and actually after you went to Northeast, you came back and started helping him because I was in Tennessee, and you came back and started helping him. And then I was like, man, I ain't never going to get to do basketball again.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you, buddy. Over almost 28 years now in the profession and doing a lot of things, I'm going to tell you the truth. The pay ain't real good, but maybe the funniest thing I've ever done is sit beside Greg Bell in a booth.
Oh, yes.
And call the action.
Yes.
And you talk about just, I don't know, it was a natural fit. And, all I get to do is sit over there and partway coach, like so many people sitting in the stands, and partway officiate, and, part of the way give my opinion on whether or not we should be doing this or this or this, like anybody cared. Yeah. And Greg made it all sound good. And, it was a blast. When I was at Northeast, that was a blast. And I could remember one day going in Dr. Campbell's office, and I was a little bit hesitant to ask him because, I got a job I need to be working at, and our boys are playing in the middle of the day in Jack State. And I said, Dr. Campbell, Greg Bell's going to call the game. He kind of needs a little bit of help. I played that card like he couldn't do it without me. Dr. Campbell just looked at me and he said, "Yeah, Brad, that'll be fine. I'll be listening to you. You go ahead." So I said, "Well, I'll make sure to give you a little shameless plug." So we had a little agreement worked out there, but it was always a blast, man. I always enjoyed it.
Speaking of Dr. Campbell, what's the chances that we ever get a basketball program going out Northeast?
Yeah, when I went to work at Northeast, people in this profession that I love, know and respect, and have known for years, they would call me and say, "Are we going out there to start a basketball program?" And it hurt me to paint them, but I wasn't going to tell them the lies. No, that's not why I'm going to work at Northeast. It's not it at all. And I don't really know, James. I will tell you that there's not for those people who are business minded, and I'm certainly not good enough business minded a lot of times, but for those people that look at it from that end, there's not a lot of money being made in any of the junior college sports. There's just not.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that's the reason. I'm not saying that it is or that it ain't. But I just know that from a monetary standpoint, there ain't a lot of money being made from those teams that do have a program. And so I can't speak for anybody else. I do know that talking about men who God put in your life, David Campbell's one of them for me. I've worked with a lot of.
He's a fine guy.
He is a phenomenal leader. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and I don't know that I've ever worked with or definitely worked for anybody who's any more respected than Dr. David Campbell. And just an absolute icon in the profession. And, it doesn't hurt that he has a great institution that he's responsible for, and it was really good before he came, but Dr. Campbell has taken that to another level over the years, and it's pretty fascinating, and we don't have to talk a lot about this, but it's pretty fascinating over the course of time from Northeast. Northeast was one of the 12 landmark institutions in the Alabama Junior College Association, and he's the third president in the life of that. Started in 1965, and he's the third president, and that speaks for itself. And so it's just a phenomenal organization and institution. Has done so much to help so many people in our area, and I just have the deepest respect for Dr. David Campbell.
Myself included. When I, last year I came and I had been working on trying to get my degree in my seminary accomplished for 15, 16 years. And it was always a situation where I was raising a family and had a job working in the mill, and I had a lot of volunteer work. So I'd have a little, I'd save my money, and I'd go as long as I could go, and then I'd have to pull out and wait and, try it again. So it's, my wife and I counted up 7 different times that I started and couldn't finish. And over every time that something would always happen, but this last time I had enough credits that I was able to just test. They wouldn't just award me, but they sent me a syllabus. And then I had to go find log in, find a proctor, and log in, do the test, and they awarded me my bachelor's degree. But I had way more credits over those years. Well, so I enrolled in a dual master's doctorate program. I can't do a PhD. Well, I say I can't, but I didn't want to do a PhD stuff. I'm just not.
Well, Dr. Jeffries sound pretty good now.
Well,
that's got a nice little ring to it.
I had enough credits thanks to what I had did at Northeast. When I pulled my stuff and sent it over, it bumped me all the way up to just 6 hours having my master's. So I was able to write a thesis, shot it through, and then I went right into the doctorate program, and I was able to knock that out in 12 months. So I got my doctorate of theology.
There you go.
And man, that was quite possibly the hardest thing I'd ever done. But I worked on it. I knew that if I didn't do it, that I probably wouldn't finish. So I had to just I went hours without sleeping, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes on the weekend, just work on it, work because that was the only way I was going to get it done, was just to not quit, not take any breaks, just hammer through.
Yeah.
So, that waiting,
Oh yeah.
waiting for that phone call to come, them saying,
Yeah. You got it.
you got it. And man,
Yeah.
I mean, I almost took the rest of the day off and just went home and slept. It was, just finishing the test was difficult. And it was the hardest thing, that I had ever done. I don't know how it was for you with your, with the masters and what y'all do. I imagine it was a lot harder than the seminary part, but I think I gained a new respect for people who pursue that.
Yeah.
Because that was quite difficult.
Sure.
You have to. I had to learn to do things differently. I had to learn to think differently.
Well, times have changed,
Yeah.
It's kind of like we were talking about math a little bit ago. And, I don't know. This is going to sound very bad coming from a high school principal, but let's just be honest here and call it what it is. When my girls were coming through and I was their high school principal, I couldn't really help them with their math.
No, I couldn't either.
It changed a lot since Saxon math back in the day,
Right.
So, I mean, it's changing. It's going to keep changing. And, one struggle that I have is that I'm very much a traditionalist. I don't like change. I'm somewhat resistant to change,
me neither.
But the fact of the matter is that things are going to change. And
Yes, sir.
we have to be able to change with them without jeopardizing our integrity or those core principles or values that we've been taught.
Right.
And that's the struggle sometimes. But
Yeah.
change is inevitable. It's going to happen.
Exactly right. If you had to choose today, would you stay on what you've done with administration, or would you have stayed coaching?
Oh, listen. I mean, I'm going to be very transparent and honest here. The only job I ever wanted was to be the head basketball coach at Scottsboro High.
Yeah.
And that was the only one I ever wanted.
I remember the first game that you watched as a principal.
Yeah,
You came up to the radio booth, and I thought I was going to have to pull out some Kleenexes.
It's still tough. It is. But I say this halfway jokingly, but with some sincerity to a certain degree. But I tell people all the time, I say, why don't you get in administration? Well, at Scottsboro High, when you do things right and you run the program the right way and you run it the clean way and your kids play hard and do the right things and you go about things, you work hard, you do the right things, but you don't win championships, you got the blueprint to make an administrator, So I say that somewhat jokingly, but somewhat truthfully, James, is that, I can remember I was privileged to be the head coach for 8 years, 8 wonderful years, even though, Butler High, Lee High School, and Johnson High School were probably the 3 biggest reasons I got out of coaching. I mean, that's legit players now.
Yeah.
And it was tough. It took a lot out of me those 2 years we were in with them. But, man, the relationships I had with my former players and coaches, some of my fondest and funnest times are still with those guys. In a world, if I had the power to script it the way Brad wants everything to go, I'd still be coaching. But it is what it is, and I think I probably took it a little too young. I was young when I took it, but that was my window. You don't get a chance to sometimes script your window and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but I do miss that. I say this a lot. I can remember you was talking about doing your graduate work, and I realized that, hey, I got a young family. I'm relatively young in the career. I'm not winning championships, and I better have a fallout plan here. And leadership was something in whatever capacity I wanted to be a part of, and so I enrolled in classes. First day of class or first night of class in the off season, I show up on campus at University of Alabama Gadsden, and I walk in the room, and there's 5, 6, 7 coaches in the room, and I know them all from coaching against all of them. And one of my close personal friends is Johnny Berry's there. Johnny, who is superintendent at Arab City Schools right now, and Johnny was the head coach at Hartsville High, and he was successful as a head coach. And I said, Coach, what are you doing in here? And he said, well, Brad, I'm tired. He said, what are you doing in here? I said, well, I'm not winning championships. And so, we all had our different reasons for being there. But again, looking back on it, James, the good Lord has a perfect plan. We don't always realize it from time to time, but His plan is perfect.
Absolutely.
And looking back on that, I know that I was very fortunate to have eight wonderful years as a head coach, and I wouldn't trade that for nothing. But man, that was a lot of fun.
My wife said that I need to remind you that she's just saying that you will be 50 in July. You're not as young as you think you are. And
I try not to think about it. I feel it every day.
well, she will be too. Whoops.
Okay. There you go. I'll remind her of that tomorrow.
Oh, she's being reminded of it right now. You know, if you read about, I died in the paper. I didn't do it to myself. I didn't have an accident. Dalton Rogers said to tell Coach Dudley that Big D said hello.
Big D.
Can't beat Brad Dudley. He said he's a great guy.
Big D's. You just can't beat good. You can't beat good.
Yeah.
And he's good to the core now, and good at anything he does.
That's right.
Good guy.
Yeah, Dalton's a good guy. I think a lot of him. So, you know, I ask everybody a few questions, Brad. Always just stuff that people don't know. One, if Brad Dudley could only eat one meal for the rest of his life.
Oh, it's a cheeseburger all day long,
Absolutely.
baby. That don't take long. You can ask anybody that's ever been around me for any period of time, you know. Again, you're right. I can sit here and we talk all night long. This does me such good to kind of just talk and chat for a while. But, you know, I lived in that household where Mom cooked every meal. And we lived in Hollywood or Kyle's up here.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a McDonald's or a Jack's around.
Yeah.
You know. And
That was a day trip.
yeah, it was. We would go on Saturday mornings to town to get groceries, and if everything went right, you know, if Greg, my older brother, would act halfway right,
Yeah.
then we'd stop at Burger Chef in Scottsboro on the way
Absolutely.
back.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Getting a cheeseburger.
I hadn't even thought about that place in a long time. Right there on Hardee's.
Yeah.
Where Hardee's is.
Absolutely.
Right now.
But getting a cheeseburger back in the day is and it still is. That's my favorite meal for sure.
Absolutely. If somebody wrote a book about you, what would the title of that book be?
Ooh, well, I would hope that it would. I don't know what the title would be, but I would hope that it would allude to or lead somebody to think honest and transparent.
Yeah.
You know, I've learned over the years it's okay not to have all the answers. You know, this old saying, fake it till you make it, I don't believe in that.
Yeah, man.
You know, especially with high school kids, they'll see through that in a heartbeat. And so I don't know what the title would be. You know, I don't try to hide my country slang and my country roots anymore. Right. You know, I just am who I am. I'm very comfortable with who I am these days. But I would hope that it would include something about just speaking truth and being honest and having a little integrity.
Do you feel like living in the glass house sort of makes it impossible not to be transparent?
Yeah, I do. I think a lot of times, a hard lesson I tried to go about the wrong way, you know, a few years ago would be to maybe, I don't know, take offense to what everybody says or does or thinks, and then try to run interference and try to keep them from saying that or this kind of thing. And you know, probably the toughest thing I deal with is these days is you're not going to cause me to lose sleep at night, because I'm going to sleep well knowing I did what I felt was best.
Absolutely.
But the toughest thing I deal with is having my wife and my children have to be susceptible to,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want that. And I'm that way with my staff these days. I don't want my staff having to hear it because of something I've done or haven't done, you
Right.
know. So I very much these days feel a sense of just kind of, I don't know what the word is, but being more of a protector.
Yes, sir.
For the people I love and in my family. And so, you know, you can say what you want about me, and you can tell whoever what. That ain't going to hold an ounce of water with me.
Yeah.
You know, but if it's true, I'm all about that, and I'm all about speaking truth. And you know, I don't think a lot of times that we do that enough.
Yeah.
And you know, real courage is knowing, you know, what lies ahead, and knowing it ain't going to be fun, but you do it anyway because it's right.
Right.
And so, you know, that's kind of where I'm at these days.
Yes, sir. The I mean, I don't have any idea. I mean, only you and the Lord knows how much longer you're going to keep doing it. But you know, you're just. I mean, you're about to be. You're still, even though we're going to be 50. I'm closing in on it too, so I can't make fun of it. But you know, I don't. Like, I can't see for myself. I've got plans to go at least until 2036 if my health stays and the Lord allows.
Yeah.
On my secular job, I'm at a place where I don't take salary here. I just enjoy doing it. I do it for just the sheer love of doing it. And
Right.
they give me a lot of liberty. They understand, and there's not a lot of other expectations. I do all I can. And they're very understanding, and I really appreciate the church. But they understand all that it, you know, I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't race car, I don't football on Saturday. You know, my hunting and fishing and extracurricular is volunteering my time doing public address or chaplain work, or you know, that's my passion. And I love. I mean, I got to have that. Like you were talking just a minute ago, this is a distraction, somewhat, you know, for me too. And I've already kind of told the audience, when basketball season starts, this has to kind of take a back seat for a few months.
Well, we do it over here in Amber Call, man.
You know, I have thought about going. Yeah. I have actually thought about doing my podcast from the scorer's table. You just setting my phone up and just having you know, just a quick thing, you know, before the game start. But I don't want to take away from anything. But I could go up and do it in the radio booth. Yeah, I could do just you know, Tater and Bingo, you know, from the booth or something like that.
Absolutely,
it'd be a lot of fun. Have just a little weekly, you know, show up there. But how much longer do you see yourself? Yeah. You know, I mean, do you have a goal? Is there like a?
It's a great question, Tater. I think it's a question that is different for a lot of people to answer. You know,
it could change.
I guess I'll put it this way. You know, my dad died at a relatively young age, I felt like. But you know, my mom was a manager at Stevenson Credit Union for 23 years. You know, worked all of her life, and you know, one of the reasons I will never, as black and gold blooded as I am, one reason I will never have animosity toward Stevenson, Alabama, or Bridgeport, Alabama, or you know, the North Jackson area, is the fact that my mom for 23 years worked as a manager in credit union in Stevenson, Alabama. And you talking about some of the finest people on the face of the earth who took her in and welcomed her and treated her like family. They really, really did. And for me to see that and kind of growing up in that, but where I'm going with that is this. After 23 years, she had reached a point where she was going to retire. And Greg and I were, you know, we had moved on. We had our own lives. And, you know, as I said earlier, we never had a whole lot growing up, but we never hurt for anything either, because Mom and Dad worked and worked and worked. And Mom reached a point where she was going to retire. And I can remember being in Stevenson Credit Union on a Sunday afternoon in December, where we had a reception for Mom, and she announced her retirement. And all the family was there. My dad was there, and you know, my dad never talked a lot about. If you knew my dad, he just was a man of few words. Really. Yeah. He didn't talk a lot about plans or what, you know, this kind of thing. It wasn't his style to to have detailed plans. He did a lot of things with a shake of a hand or on a whim and that kind of thing. But he had kind of let it be known that he was going to step back from farming and maybe just do the cows and kind of, and their plan was to enjoy retirement. And so that was on a Sunday afternoon in December, and as good Lord would have it, his way always wins out. 3 days later, on Wednesday night, my dad was taken from this earth, and he passed away from a heart attack. And to me, as I look back on that, the older I am, my mom and dad never got to enjoy a retirement together.
Right.
And so, do I think about that a lot? I do, because I just, I watched my mom celebrate her entire retirement as a widowed lady.
Yeah.
And that's tough. And so I sit and I think, okay, well, what am I going to do? Because I'm at retirement age. I could retire. My wife is too. Thankfully, we both have kind of made it to that point. I'll be an absolute liar. I said we didn't talk about it from time to time, but I kind of made a plan, and I kind of made a pact with myself more than anything else when I chose to leave Northeast and return back to the high school, was that, okay, I'm not real good at setting a goal. I'm not going to say, okay, well, I'm going to give you this many years or this many years or this many years. Again, I can sit here and I'm a stickler for plans. I'm an agenda guy.
Yeah.
I like to make a plan and follow a plan.
Yeah.
I carry this every day in my pocket that
Yeah.
is a plan. I might not follow it, but it's a plan. And so I made a pact with myself that I'm going to do this until the time is right. And I trust that whenever that time is, when it ain't right anymore and it's time to do something else, I trust that the good Lord will tell me, you know what, it's time for a change of scenery. It's time for you to do something different.
Right.
And I don't know when that's going to be. But I don't live life these days thinking I got to do 3 more or I need to do 4 more to get to this or this or this. Because I've learned from watching, my mom and my dad, I've learned that sometimes the best laid plans don't work out that way.
Right.
And we can't live life with a plan that takes things for granted and thinks that everything's going to be this way when I get to this day on the calendar.
Yeah.
And I choose not to do that. So I really don't know how long. I don't know what else I would do, Tater.
Yeah.
If it's paid well and you let me sit up here with you, I do this every day.
Hey.
But
I hear you.
I don't really know what lies ahead, but I don't worry about it.
Right.
And so I enjoy what I'm doing. I love my job. It's a hard job, but you know what? It's the best job I've ever had, for sure. I said coaching was the funnest it was, but this is the best job I've had. Right. I get a chance to see impacts made everywhere in our school, but a 70-hour work week is wear on you.
Yes,
it will. And it doesn't turn off sometimes, and I've been fortunate enough to get a run at this position twice, and I consider that an absolute blessing, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So I don't know. The answer to your question in Brad words, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to predict it.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I said to myself. That's my plan, is to go to I'll hit my 25 years in March, or excuse me, I'll turn 60 in March of 2036.
Yeah.
I'll have my 25 years in for full retirement in September of that year.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if my health's good and I'm still enjoying what I do, it's just gonna depend on how much things change between now and then for me.
The thing I often tell people is I enjoy the leadership part of things. I really do. But the thing I'm best at, I'm a worker. I can outwork most folks. If you give me something to work on, you give me a task or a chore, I'm going to outwork you. And that's there's a lot for me to value in just putting in a hard full day's work and knowing what that feels like at the end of the day. And this past weekend we didn't have much of a fall break, but we had a little bit, and I was able to kind of check out the last couple of days, and yesterday, Monday, I didn't do anything school related, and I just played on the farm. I worked in the yard, and I piddled at this, as my daddy would say. I did nothing more than piddle, Tater.
Yeah, all day long.
But I was tired at the end of the day, and it was a good feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm a much better laborer than I am a leader. I realize that, and I understand it. And so I would like to think I got a few more years to give somebody that's a good laborer.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of good labor, Jason Hass has sent in a question.
Jason Hass, I saw where he was on here the other night.
Yeah, he did.
Jason Hass is one of these guys with an extensive vocabulary.
Yes.
He's way too smart for me to have a deep.
I was pretty intimidated. I was pretty intimidated by him. He asked a good question, and I already know the answer.
This is going to be good.
He said, "I want you to ask Brad." He says, "Ask Brad why he cut down the big tree in front of the high school. It was so pretty. I'm not sure why he hated it."
Man,
I don't know if he's calling you the Lord or.
I tell you what, and to think this guy's our assistant superintendent, right?
What would we do without guys like that?
I don't know, but yeah, seriously though, Jason Hass is what you and I are fortunate to see. The older we've gotten, is to see all these guys get to a level where they serve, and I'm proud of them. I just am. Scott Hodges is the best administrator I've ever known anywhere, Tater. Yeah,
He's fantastic,
and I'm proud of him and what he does, and the other guys that growing up, Jeff Tubbs and Jason Arnold and Jason Hass and Ken Holder just retired on us, but all these guys that to think about back in the day, we were all lined up wanting these jobs,
Yeah.
and I've told my boss, Amy Childress, it's a little bit concerning to me these days because there didn't seem to be as many lined up to take that next step in education and
Right.
leadership like we wanted to,
Right.
and Zach Holt's another one that we got fantastic people in these positions, and they've worked hard to get to where they are.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to serve with them.
It's something saying, like with just Zach, for instance, not too long ago, when Buddy decided he was going to retire, I walked in and I went over to see him, and I said, Coach, I'm gonna miss you. I never thought I'd say that about a guy that's transplanted in here from North Jackson, but I grew really, really fond of Mr. Holt, and he became a good friend to me, and he and Jennifer both down through the years were just really good to my family, and really good to my mother, and just all around just good people. They really helped us out a whole lot. And when he retired, I went in and told him, I wished him well, and there was nothing I could do to help Buddy Holt, but and he came over and gave me a hug, and I thought he was going to rip my head off my shoulders, when he wrapped me up. But he's still strong as a bull, The guy.
He hadn't aged a bit, Buddy Holt hadn't, and I totally agree with you. Buddy was, Jerry Kirkland was the reason I wanted to coach basketball.
Yeah.
Buddy Holt's the reason I wanted to be an administrator. He was a fantastic administrator to work for, and to watch how he handled things. And but yeah, absolutely, I fully get it. These guys, again, getting back to kind of what we started tonight with, these guys that make an impact on you. I mean, I wouldn't take anything for those memories and those times, And these days, I've had to find other groups. Larry Morris, bless his soul, has passed on. Larry Morris was a mentor of mine in so many ways as an administrator and athletic director. And these days, I catch myself calling folks that people don't know that I call, like Kenny Chief Harding.
Yeah,
I think the absolute world of Chief Harding in his family.
Chief has he's a wellspring of wisdom too. I get to sit and listen to him talk, and.
But Chief reminded me not too long ago. I called him. I said, "Look, man," I said, "I need some. What do you need?" I said, "Well, I just need you from time to time to check in, come in, sit out in my office, and let's just chat." what do you need? And I said, well, I used to have this with some of these other guys, and they've all passed on. And I said, the old guard is gone. And he said, Brad, you are the old guard.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, he's right, but still, I need those guys and their wisdom. And Tony Ball's another one, you know, and he's not around Scottsboro anymore, but I still call him, you
Right.
know. And but all these guys that were good to me, they still are. They're still a wealth of knowledge and somebody I can look to ask
Yeah.
for advice.
Absolutely. You ain't gonna believe this, but it's time to close.
I've had a ball, man.
It's gone. I mean, we've been on here an hour and 20 minutes. It's gone just like that.
I knew it'd be this way, Taylor. I told when I left the house fair, I said, "How long, guys?" I don't know. It'll be a little while though. It's easy to talk to, man. I think the world of you. Think about what you do. I told you when I walked in up here, you know, what you've done with this place. It's pretty impressive, Tater. I'm proud of you, man. I want you to know.
Well, I appreciate that.
And the work you're doing, trust me when I know, and I'll never not know. We all have important jobs. We all got a lot on our plates and a lot of roles. Tater, what you're doing is more important than anything else we're doing. You being able to preach God's word and share the message and lead people to Christ is way more important than anything else we all got going on.
And I appreciate that. I also think, you know, that doesn't happen without other people, you know, and I understand what you're saying. I appreciate that too. It means a whole lot to me. You say that. I would add to that, I didn't do anything alone. I had a lot of help.
Yeah.
I couldn't have got any of this done without the folks, you know, buying into what we were doing. It's just like coaching a basketball team or a football team or a track, whatever it is, you know, people do. People had to buy into the vision that the Lord gave me, and, you know, it's become their vision.
Yeah.
And without them, there's no way I could do it by myself. This is a community effort. It's Scottsboro, it's Bridgeport, it's Hollywood, it's Stevenson, it's New Hope, Tennessee, it's Section, Alabama, it's Bryant, it's Woodville, it's Skyline.
Yeah.
You know, we got people coming. There's people coming from Fort Payne and Rainsville, and you know, there's just folks coming from all over the place.
Right.
And turning this into, you know, to something just really, really special. And I don't have any, I say this a lot, I don't have any animosity. I praise the Lord for everything that's going good at other places. I'm very happy when I hear about good things happening in other churches. I rejoice for that. The Lord called me to Mud Creek for a reason. These are just my people.
Yeah.
You know, and we call it the Creek Squad up here. You know, the Creek Squad is just a different group.
Yeah.
And God ministers, you know, uses different churches to minister to different people.
Right.
Everybody's got there should be a place, you know, that everybody can go and find somewhere to fit in and serve and work and leave all that other stuff,
Yeah.
you know, behind. Those are things, though, that I learned from ball coaches and good school administrators and people who wanted me to grow up and be a productive human being. You know, I learned life lessons before I learned about the Lord. And it was just the plan the Lord had for my life.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't do what we're doing here without folks on the outside and working in the schools and working on the courts and working up and down the halls and, you know, working in the lunchrooms and working in the bus garages and just, you know, driving buses and just anything and everything, finding places to serve and put somebody else. That's what this whole thing about, making much of Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus first, others second, and yourself last.
Absolutely.
And that's the real key to joy, you know, in a person's heart. And we've been very blessed to have people that just buy into that.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference.
You know, on occasion I get a chance to remind students of that, you know, and I'll be honest, you know, when the day comes when I can't remind a student in my office of Jesus' love for them first, then, you know, somebody else can lead this position.
Yeah.
You know, and I believe that because I was, you know, people imparted their wisdom and their love and gave to me, and if I can't in return give that back to my kids at school and my staff, then it's not where I need to be. And
Absolutely.
so, thankfully, it is for now, and I'm very grateful to having that role. There used to be an old sign. I don't know if it's still there, but years ago, I don't know why I remember this, but I do. But there used to be an old sign hanging above the cash register at KFC down in town that said, "It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice."
Yes.
And people are going to remember how you made them feel
Absolutely.
more than anything else.
Maya Angelou said that. I wrote an essay one time for
That's right.
for English class when I was at Northeast on that line of that Maya Angelou said people forget what you say, they forget what you do, but they don't ever forget how you make them feel.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And Dr. David Smith told me one time, nobody knows how much you care, or nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care.
Absolutely.
And what you guys do on a regular basis is, I do remember what it was like to be that guy, to be that kid walking up down those halls who needed some positive influence.
Let me just say one thing that I didn't know what we were going to talk about when I was headed over here, Tater, but I knew that probably I would get an opportunity to say this. And as we close, I would simply say this. People ask me all the time, so what's different about your job now than it was the first time you came through? Well, there are a lot of things that are different about the job.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that's not different is the one thing that's not different than it was when you and I were students. Students are all that's right in this world.
Yeah.
Students haven't changed a bit, James Jeffrey.
No.
Not a bit.
No.
You and I, when we were 15 or 16, were just like those 15, 16-year-olds down there right now.
Yes, sir.
Or at North Jackson High. Mm-hmm. Students haven't changed. Kids haven't changed. I'm an absolute firm believer in that. What's changed is what we expect and what we demand and how we treat them.
Yeah.
And, that's where we as adults have screwed this thing up a little bit in my mind. Mm-hmm. It's not on kids. Kids are always right in this world. And, I feel like that we've kind of settled for being adults a little bit the last few years. And this world we don't need any more adults who are content and settling. We need adults who are on fire to keep moving and shaking. And so,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
When I had Rick Roden on, was one of the things that we talked about a whole lot, and with Katie also last week, was growing. Mm-hmm. Well, improving as a community, improving as people, holding on to the things that that are important to us.
Yes.
But figuring out ways to keep our kids here, to impart a love for this place. A lot of them like us. We move away and then we come back. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these folks never come back. Mm-hmm. And I had 2 of my kids moved off, and they don't plan on coming back. Mm-hmm. And here I am now saying, things are changing. Give us another shot.
Right.
It's not the same place that you left 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The city's changing. Our mindsets are changing thanks to, Josh does a lot of this up here. He I think you and him are.
Josh Hardy.
Yeah, he's
fantastic school principal. I love him.
Oh yeah,
think the world of.
He does a lot of things probably different than Chief did it, and I'm sure his style and approach is a little different. I actually thought the other day, I meant to say this earlier when I asked you what would be next. I was going to segue into it and then forgot about it, but I think a good next place for you would be like an athletic director role. I could really see you doing what Moose did when he stepped away from coaching, because he had such a love for the athletics and he wanted to stay around, and he did a really good job.
Yeah. Well, he did. I don't know, Tater. I wouldn't want to do what I do without the athletic piece of it.
Yeah.
I can for sure say that. At the same time, the athletic piece of it's why I put such long hours in.
Yeah.
So, but for me, it's a culture. Again, I've said we're closing a couple of times, but I would leave it this way. I don't want kids at Scottsboro High, and I think Josh Harding is exactly the same way. It's why I love him. He didn't want people or kids at North Jackson High to leave with regrets. I don't want them leaving with regrets from Scottsboro High.
Yeah.
I have those. They're as fond of times as I had. I look back on it and I regret not being a better student, not playing all three sports, not going to the prom every time I had a chance, or going to every homecoming dance, or what.
Yeah.
You know, I live with some of those regrets, and I don't want our students to live with those. And
Right.
so it's a culture thing for us. If I can get them to halfway want to be there, then that's half the battle.
Absolutely.
And so that's where it is. That's where it starts and stops with me. That's all I really know how to do is to try to give them a place where they want to be. And Josh is the same way.
Yep.
And you do that here too. You know,
I'm trying.
It's hard to have church by yourself.
Absolutely.
But if you want to be here, it's
Yeah.
a little easier to worship.
Yeah. Yep. And that's part of the reason, like the things that you was commenting on before we got started, you know, out of the box, you know, wanted to be like, when we were trying to do this, what the Lord put in my heart was make it feel like grandmother's front porch.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what we, you know, shot for. Is the whole vibe is just my grandmother's front porch.
Yeah.
You know, and it's been from the very first day, and it'll be that way hopefully on my last day from here. And we're moving in the process of, you know, transitioning and out of necessity. The Lord's put in some things on our heart that we're working on for down the road that we've already got a plan of succession in place. You know, there's going to come a day when I'm not going to, you know, when I'm just not going to be the right guy. And I've told the church, I've told their men, when that day comes, I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm going to step out of the way and I'm going to help the next guy.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we're supposed to do.
It is.
You know,
You know, if you don't want it better for the people who come behind you than what you had,
absolutely.
I don't know how to relate with those people.
Yeah, man.
I want them to have it better than what we had.
Absolutely. And I appreciate what you do, Brad.
Absolutely,
And
man.
I appreciate your time. And I'm coming back in December. I think the first Tuesday in November is my last episode through November. And then I'll come back in December. And for my audience, we're going to do some Christmas episodes where we're just going to talk. And I'm going to interact with you guys a little more. Our worship team's going to be stopping by. We're going to do a few sets, just some Christmas songs, let the worship team kind of get in and do this. And then January and February, I'm taking off for basketball. I mean, there's games every Tuesday, so I got to take off those 2 months. I'm coming back in March, and when I do next year, I'm transitioning from Facebook to YouTube.
Okay.
When I do that, we're going to set it up a little more actual podcast style, be available on video and audio and all that stuff. So all the folks that I've had on, I want to do like a yearly, at least once a year, kind of check back in and, you know, go over some things. And I may end up even doing some, I don't know what you call them, just consecutive episodes,
Right.
You know, kind of like preaching through a book of the Bible kind of thing, you know, just bring guys in and girls and just talk about just, you know, different aspects of what you guys do and really delve into like leadership and aspects of things that people just don't think about. Every job has a different way of doing it.
Absolutely.
And everybody has a different way of doing it. But man, thank you for coming, Brad. It's been a joy, man. Anything you want to say before we close out tonight?
No, just that I appreciate you having me. I really do, man. And you know, you and I have always had common bonds in a lot of things, and I think one of them is for this area, and it's people, and that'll never change with me. And so I appreciate you just giving me a little bit of time just to sit and talk. You know, it does me a world of good. It really does. I'll answer emails when I get back to the house here in a minute and get ready for another school week.
I'm sure you'll have a bunch of them.
But yeah, I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you do. And
Thank you,
God
Brad.
bless.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Well, guys, that's going to wrap us up tonight. Appreciate you guys for tuning us in. Join back next week. Going to be a good show next week. Got Coach Derek Wynn going to be here next week from section.
Yeah.
And
now there's somebody who's won a few games, and he gets to keep coaching.
Well,
because he's won a little bit.
I tell you what, Brad, if you ain't busy, you know, you're free to drop back by. I can always make room for a third up here on the stage.
No, he's got it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We look forward to having Coach Wynn on, the Lord will. And so you guys tune us back in next week, 7:00 on Tuesday night. We'll do our best to get on time. And I hope we don't have any trouble. Until next time, guys, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Until next week, God bless and take care. Thank you for meeting us at the creek, and we hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you have questions or comments you'd like for us to read, send those to mudcreekpastor@gmail.com. Again, that's mudcreekpastor@gmail.com. Thank you for meeting us at the creek, and we'll see you next time.